Oh, absolutely do I still cover by, but I mean, look at it. Just look at it. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about Riven Earth by Zammar, Ahmer, the first book of Astia. And yes, I 100% got this for the cover. And it's actually funny because I saw online somewhere, I saw the cover and I'm like, that's awesome. Immediately added it to my want to read list on Goodreads. And then completely independent of that, ended up in a buddy read that involved the author of this book, Zammar, doing a Guy Gabriel K read over on Ben's channel. And so ended up getting to know him a little bit, talking to him more. And so I already had this on my wish list. And he was asking if I wanted a review copy, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna have the hardcover I got as a Christmas gift, and I knew it was coming. And so I'm like, but you know, you can send me a digital copy if you want. And so he sent me the audiobooks, and it was nice because I got to triple format this, and I did a lot of reading out of this beautiful naked hardcover because, again, look at it, I love this. So I did a lot of reading out of that. There's some pictures in it which are great. But I also did do some audio, which was really well done, as well as the ebooks on Kindle Unlimited. So I focused, and I ended up once I started this, I put down all of the other books that I was reading because I'm like, I'm just gonna read this, and it pulled me in very, very quickly. So this is one of those books, I will say. So the prologue was such a great start, and the prologue, there was a lot of action. There's a lot going on. It is pretty crazy, and it sets up some really important stuff for the story. Although this story is not like constantly action packed by any means. But the interesting thing, and I'm going to talk a lot about the reasons that I really loved this and had a lot of fun with it. But the interesting thing is this is actually less the kind of story I'm normally into because it is more of a character focused. It's definitely on like the grimdark side. You can tell there's some inspiration from Abercrombie, and so that kind of thing. I tend to be more world building focused. And not really an Abercrombie fan. And so it on paper, it doesn't necessarily sound like something that I would have enjoyed as much, which is another reason I'm glad I really went into this one blind because I had a really good time. So the things that really pulled me in are the world, the lore, and the world building, and those types of thing. And this is set up, and I did go in totally blind, and I had the book sitting face down at one point, and I happened to kind of just read the back of the book after I was already 20% in or so, and I'm like, oh, because there are some things that I hadn't gotten to yet, because it's not one of those books that just immediately throws the premise, but. So the start here, and with the prologue, is we have dryads who are of Astia, the earth, and there's basically we find out humanity was under them, and like they were worshipped, gods, this religion, and all of this stuff with the earth. But there was some like a rebellion, especially that involved the discovery of fire. And they rebelled, and they were mostly wiped out, and that's kind of how we start the prologue. And then what we're following here is there's a lot of like politics, maneuvering, and that type of thing, and a more of a character journey. But just immediately we're set up with Astia, which is the the Earth, and then we have also the Sun, Mithras, the Moon, Hecata, and so these different entities and kind of the way that it interacts. Like there's different. Bits like there's like a desert land, and there are people who have some sorts of powers from that are called sun touched or sun cursed, depending on the side you're looking at there. You also have there are these like cat people who are of the moon, and they live like outside, and you have the descriptions here, and I will note I did go in blind, but the world has stopped turning. So you have different spots of like sunlight versus like less sunlight and that kind of thing, which is really important. But people don't necessarily know that that's happened as much either. So it's kind of it's known, but it's not like a big thing that people know either because it's happened, and people don't necessarily understand everything that's going on, and that's something the book does really, really well too is pull all kinds of pieces together. This is the type of debut that it almost feels like it's trying to do too much, but it executes everything really well, so it just sort of works because there is so much put in here, and yet it's very fast-paced. We don't get info dumps, and in fact, the way that the story is kind of set up, where we have our mainline story, and then we'll have some lines, some longer passages, some really shorter passages from something that was written by the king, who was a big figure in the rebellion. And also you have some flashbacks of like certain time periods ago, like 5 years ago, 1 year ago, even further in some cases. So you see these different things, and it kind of weaves the story, so you're figuring out things as you go along, which I think works really well in a very fast-paced story, and also a character-focused story where we're finding more about these people as we go, more about the world. So we don't really get info dumping and that type of thing. There's one particular passage where I felt like it was like, oh, we're kind of dumping a little bit of stuff here. And it felt like it was a little bit less natural feeling than a lot of it did, where there was a character who was just kind of being told a lot of things, finding out things. But then as I got further in, I'm like, oh, I see why it was done the way that it was. And it made it make a lot more sense as I learned more about both of the characters that were involved, because it was kind of an early scene. So even that I thought worked really, really well. And I'm very curious to see what happens here, because this sets up quite a lot to be happening as well, with just what's happening between these different powers, changes happening to the earth, and just kind of the lore of the creatures. I will show too, because there are some pictures, and like immediately this is the thing too, like the cover is very, very cool. But so there's a picture of a dryad here, very cool as well. And then I need to find super quick, I know it's early on here, what's called a butte, which is like a dinosaur turtle thing with like plants growing on it. And like that's so cool. I was so pulled in by that, seeing that, to be honest. And there are other really interesting creatures, like these giant birds called gorilla birds, and like they don't have horses either. They have lomers that also involve are affected by nature, and it's the different types of creatures are very much affected by a lot of areas, so you kind of are finding out more. So a lot of things that I really like with the world building, with having it be such a very, very high fantasy, different elements. It's not our world. It's very epic, and all of these different things that are being set up in a way, even though it's character focused. Now, I don't tend to be as much of a character reader, and I think the characters here are really good and well done, because this is like a grimdark story, and so you definitely have some of the characters, like a lot of the grumbling and the f this f that type of thing as well. I feel like you get where some of those bits are where it definitely felt kind of Abercrombie, and I got that. But the thing for me is you don't get the just bludgeoning of sarcasm and cynicism that I feel like Abercrombie can't help himself with delivering in every book he writes, that I've read at least. And so for me, it had kind of that feel, but it didn't do the things that really annoyed me as much. Although some of that stuff was just a bit more than is specifically to my preference, and that's just where I joked too, because I was chatting with the author a little bit about this as I was reading it. And I'm like, immediately, I know I'm going to be the only person probably, but I'm going to be the person who's like, I really wish this was slower and longer, because while this isn't super action-packed, it moves very quickly. And it's not a super long book either, and it moves very quickly and does a lot. So it feels like it's always moving, but all of the elements I really loved with the world building, the lore, the creatures, I just want to explore this world, and I think we're going to get a lot more of that as we go along. But that's kind of where, I say a lot, I've seen a lot of debuts where they go do too much, and it's way too long, and it's just like there. And this is like the opposite. This is one of the ones where I'm like, yeah, but like, I understand you're doing it right, you're doing the smart thing, you're making it quick. I would have liked this to be a little bit slower and focused a little bit more on those elements. And some of the characters too, they're complex, and even like the villain type of characters too. There's a specific thing with that character, and I won't say obviously for spoiler reasons, but there's a specific thing with that character. They are diabolical, and they have plans. It's not always clear what they're doing, but they're always scheming and trying to find some things out. But there's like just a moment of humanity that you see there, where they have like a totally actually like not evil thought, because they're not just like mustache twirling, like yeah, they're a person. Even though they're a terrible person, you get a lot of background on why they are the way that they are. It makes sense. And then you also just see too, even they are humanized. And like there's another character that seems like they're going to be sort of like almost like a bad guy, and like they're not the most sympathetic of characters by any means, but again, you see though the moments that still humanize them. And so I think it's really interesting the way it's handled, because there's a lot going on in this world with the kind of the religion. And in the main kingdom, this takes place, and worship has been outlawed because it's looked at as the dryads use this as a way to control people. It's been outlawed. You're not allowed to worship anything. But naturally, people are going to still find ways to worship this, worship that. Religion kind of creeps in. So you have that going on. You have a lot of issues with different parts of the kingdom from different areas. You've got the people I mentioned kind of briefly, the sun cursed, which are very much, treated very, very poorly, ostracized, in some cases killed. And so you have all of this stuff where it's whether the people seem like they're like the good guys or the bad guys. Nobody is perfect. It's definitely shades of gray with the characters and a lot of complicated things, and none of them feel one note either, because there's one character who I feel like I was probably supposed to be more sympathetic to earlier, and I wasn't, because I'm just like, yeah, you annoy me. Made sense the way they were the way they were. But you get hints of maybe what caused them, what kind of their backstory was that made them the way that they are kind of throughout. And then as you start to wrap around, you see more, it becomes clearer and clearer. And then you get the full thing in a flashback later on. You're like, yeah, okay, this is making a lot more sense. And it also, again, it was more complex too. You do get a lot of dealing with characters that have, different issues, different backgrounds, different everything. And so it feels really, really inclusive in a way that there's just a lot of different things going on. And I feel like the author did a good job with exploring the different issues that people have, whether it's something in their past, whether it's mental illness, whether it's the, discrimination and horrible things happening to other people, that kind of thing as well. Doing it all in a nuanced way, but where it's while there's definitely, you can see some themes here with, like the environment, the earth, and what's been done, the dryads were like very nature, so people kind of got against that. But at the same time, like, you don't know what the right answer is. You don't know what the right side is. It doesn't necessarily feel like there is a right side, because kind of everyone has their major flaws. And there's a particularly poignant line where somebody just basically says that, like, they know that they're supposed to see their side as the good side, but like they do things that are terrible, and it's just trying to like justify that dichotomy of how can we be the good people but also do these bad things. And so you get a lot of that exploration, which I think is well done. Now, there are points where we're doing a little bit more of the kind of like really deep character introspection than I'm as much of a preference kind of thing. And so, like I said, if this was like perfectly to my taste, probably less people would like it, to be honest, because I tend to be a little bit more niche. But if this was perfectly to my taste, it'd be a little bit longer. We do a little bit more exploration of the world, a little less of the characters. But at the same time, I just found myself really engaged. And by the end of it, there was no character I wasn't engaged in their POVs at all either. Because I'd found out enough about them, or I was just invested enough as their stories that went along, and so there's no character I wasn't invested in at all. I do think, too, with it being a little bit shorter and very fast-paced, it did feel at times that we didn't get to spend as much time with some characters. So while everybody got some depth and definitely got some time, I feel like, again, this could have used just a little bit more page count, in my opinion, which I know is controversial. And I'm the first to admit I will sometimes also say the book is too long. But this just felt like it was very, very neat, and it was well done, and it works the way that it is. But that's just where it's like subjectively, I'm like, I wanted a little bit more of these things. And so that's kind of where, but I really enjoyed this. This is, like I said, there are a lot of things about this that I feel like are not normally to my taste, and yet just kind of worked. I even joked, I'm like, as I got further in, I'm like, the further I get into this, the more I can tell you're an Abercrombie fan to the author, and he is, and so it's there. And nothing feels like it's pulled from there. You can just, with kind of some of the character styling, some of the characters themselves just kind of feel like in that vein. So kind of with that, and kind of just with it being more of a character book than a world building type of book, I feel like I should have, normally, like on paper, this isn't a book that I really, really enjoy, but I really, really liked this. I had a lot of fun with it, and I will absolutely be continuing with the next book, and I'm really excited to dig in more and see what is to come. But yeah, this is really solid. I definitely recommend it. I know I've kind of been all over the place because I had a lot of thoughts about it I wanted to talk about, but if you like grimdark, especially if you do like character-focused books, this does a really good job at that as well. And honestly, even though it's not the entire focus, there's so much cool elements to the world, to the lore, and I have a feeling we're going to find out even more. So there's a lot of really, really cool stuff going on there, and I'm very excited to dig in and find more. Really, though, those are my thoughts on Riven Earth, and why not? We'll show the cover one more time because I love it. This is like, if we're talking top covers, this is up there. I still love this so much. But anyway, Riven Earth by Zammar Ahmer. And yeah, let me know if you've read this or your thoughts on kind of any of the things that I talked about in here as well. Or let me know a book that didn't on paper sound like it was going to be for you, but that you really enjoyed anyway as well. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Also, make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description as always for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.